Good evening and welcome to ITV News. This is Monday night's calendar.
Yes, hello, good evening. Here are tonight's main stories.
An investigation's underway in North Yorkshire where a human has become infected with a new strain of swine flu for the first time.
We are investigating all possible routes of transmission. It is possible that there may have been some limited transmission between people.
Also tonight we head out with a charity which says hoarding like this can put lives at risk and says more support is needed for sufferers.
What do we all think? The first thing you think when you're passing a house that's full of clutter outside or clutter inside, or you can't, it's piled up in the windows, you just think lazy. It's a mental disorder.
He had an aura, and all the great coaches, managers, they all have that. He certainly had that, and when he spoke, you listened.
Tributes are paid to the late Terry Venables after his eventful but ultimately unsuccessful spell at Elland Road.
And if you think today was cold, you wait till we head into the rest of the week. Temperatures are set to tumble, which means we could see a wintry mix. Join me later and I'll tell you more.
So we start tonight with efforts to trace a potential outbreak of a new strain of swine flu after the UK's first ever human infection of it was found in North Yorkshire.
Routine screening of GP surgeries uncovered the case of the H1N2 virus, similar to a strain currently spreading in pigs. The person has now recovered from what were mild symptoms.
This afternoon, the UK Health Security Agency released a statement from its London base saying investigations are continuing. Charanpreet Kara has been following developments there in London. And Charanpreet, what do we know about this case in North Yorkshire?
Well, Ian, very little, to be honest. This person hasn't been identified. What we do understand is that they had a mild illness and that was picked up as swine flu at their GP practice. Now, we don't know how they caught it. They're not understood to have worked with pigs and they have, as you say, fully recovered. The UK Health Security Agency is now tracing their contacts to prevent the virus from spreading.
We are investigating all possible routes of transmission. It is possible that there may have been some limited transmission between people, but that is different from a situation of more widespread transmission among people. As part of our investigations, we are increasing our surveillance efforts just to understand exactly if there has been any transmission, and if so, how far the virus has been transmitted.
So, Charanpreet, just how concerned should we be about this?
Well, it's hard to say. Cases of swine flu do pop up from time to time. There have been about 50 reported since 2005 across the globe. This one does seem a little different, though. It's genetically unrelated to those that have come before. It has been reported to the World Health Organization, and the UK Health Security Agency is increasing its surveillance in GP practices and hospitals across North Yorkshire. Now, this is, as we said, a mild illness in this particular case, but with a very different illness, a very different virus, still in the rearview mirror. These agencies are taking it seriously and taking the appropriate procedures to contain it.
OK, Charanpreet Kara live in Westminster, thank you. Well, next tonight to the family of a woman from Chesterfield who was murdered by her stalker, who say her death will not be in vain. It comes after a coroner released recommendations on how stalking should be dealt with, not only by Derbyshire police, but by forces across the country.
Gracie Spinks was murdered in June 2021 by her former colleague Michael Sellers. Derbyshire police admitted to significant failings after a 3-week inquest. It failed to investigate a bag of weapons belonging to Sellers, treating it as lost property, and made numerous errors after Gracie reported his obsessive behaviour.
Well, now the Chesterfield coroner has written to Derbyshire's Chief Constable and the Home Secretary, making 6 recommendations for changes to prevent similar deaths in the future.
These include better recording and linking together of stalking reports, retraining officers and introducing stalking advocates to every force. Gracie's parents gave their first reaction to Calendar at their home today, and our reporter Adam Fowler.
We've got to live with this for the rest of our lives, and it will never go away. But if changes can be made and put in place and the police pull their socks up, then Gracie's death wouldn't have been in vain. I think she would have accomplished something, and ongoing. I don't think it'll ever close. I think it needs to be continued, and that's what we're going to do.
The coroner says in his report that as recently as August, a child found a knife in bushes in a local park, and the call handler told him to destroy the knife and that the police wouldn't be attending. I mean, how do you feel about the fact that as recently as August, this sort of thing is still going on?
Well, very disappointed.
Yeah, it just proved that they've not really made any changes after they said they had, and they still made the same mistake again after all this and all the publicity and the profile of Gracie's story. They still ignore something like that and don't deal with it properly. So it was going on again. Yeah. This was like 18 months after. So what's going on? You know, it needs to be changed. There's changes got to be made.
This prevention of future deaths report is going to be sent to the Home Secretary. How confident are you that this will lead to some permanent change?
Gives me hope. Yeah, that's all we can hope for, isn't it? That you know, that we can bring a change. And yeah, like Richard says, he's taking it right to the top, to the Home Secretary. So yeah, it's
very easy to say we've done this, X, Y, and Z, but to actually do it is the important thing. And yeah, we're going to be checking on this and making sure that these changes that they say they're going to do, that they do. We're not going to let it go because it's something we just feel drawn to.
Yeah.
And right from the beginning, we knew we had to do this. The young girls that don't feel safe and maybe are a bit nervous about reporting stalking incident, we want them to have the confidence to go to the police and know that the police are going to do something about it. That's the important thing, because I think people's opinions and trust in the police is zero at the moment.
It's Christmas coming up as well. What's this Christmas going to be like for you?
It'll be the third Christmas without Gracie, yeah. I can't believe it. It's 2 3/4 year, 2.5 years. Never be like they used to be.
No.
I can't enjoy Christmas like I used to when they were
We used to
kids.
have amazing family Christmases here, but we've never even put a tree up since. It's just like another day, really, sadly.
That was Gracie's mum, Alison, speaking to Adam Fowler there. And tonight, Derbyshire Police have released a statement following those coroner's recommendations. In it, Deputy Chief Constable Simon Blatchley said, "We will now review the recommendations that have been made. And I also want to reiterate the force's sincere apologies to the family, friends and wider community."
A charity in North Yorkshire is warning of the dangers of hoarding disorder and the threat it can pose to people's lives. In the York area alone, an average of 6 new cases a day are being reported involving individuals living in unsanitary conditions where the risk of fire is also a real danger.
Community Bees is a charity which goes into the homes of people living with the disorder and helps with clearance and counselling. But it says it's a growing problem and it doesn't have the resources to tackle it. Sally Simpson reports.
From piles of rubbish amassed over months and even years, to personal possessions purchased time and again and never thrown away. These homes are the result of hoarding disorder, conditions unfit to live in, attracting vermin and posing a life-threatening risk of fire.
So when did you first become aware of what was happening here?
That's what happened at this house in Huntington.
Barry's daughter rang me and asked, would it be possible for Community Bees to come down and see the situation that he was in and what had happened with the fire.
Michaela runs a charity which aims to intervene before it's too late.
And what did you find when you first came down here?
Oh my gosh, horrendous. Big hoarder. In here was just full. No real carpet space or anything like that. Outside in the gardens, it's just really mirror images what this place was like. It was bad, you know, and I think if he hadn't realised the fire so soon, I don't think Barry would be here today, to be honest.
For now, Barry is living in a caravan while his 2 daughters try to get his house habitable once more. He says coming so close to losing his home and even his life has made him face facts.
It must have crept up, well, it did creep up on me. I didn't realise how bad I was getting, but I was. What I've realised now is that in here I'm 26, in here I'm 76, and there's a limit to what I can do now.
It's heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. He's deteriorating every time we see him. His mental health's really struggling at the moment, and to be fair, been affecting us as well as my dad, the whole family. It's just awful.
There are people out there that do understand it if they've got family members that are hoarders.
Yeah.
But we didn't know enough about it.
We didn't.
And I think until you're in that situation, we need to get that point across. There are people that might not have the support that we've had.
Community Bees says it can only continue to prop people up if its income, which currently comes from small grants and Just Giving fundraising, gets a boost, as demand for its vital service shows no sign of slowing down.
Well, Sally's here with us now. Sally, we've seen there firsthand just how hazardous these conditions can be. What do we know about what causes people to become hoarders?
Well, Lisa, experts say it very much is a mental disorder, and it's often a result of loss, whether that's a job or more likely a loved one. Bereavement's a common trigger. People experiencing grief try to fill the void with things. They hang on to them and can't bring themselves to throw them away. And as Barry told me there, it often creeps up on people, and before they realise it, they are living in dangerous and very unhealthy conditions. Well, earlier I spoke to the charity Hoarding Disorders UK, and they just put it into context how common this disorder is.
We think there's up to 5% of the population in the UK have hoarding behaviours. So that's over 3 million people. And one of the scary statistics is that although it's about 5% of the population, 1 in 3 fire deaths are hoarded related.
Well, fire clearly a big risk and a big hazard to people who hoard, and the charities like Community Bees that are trying their best to help people who suffer from this disorder say, like everyone, they're completely dependent on donations. They can only really continue to do what they do if they get more funding. They do get some from the council, and they're constantly fundraising through Just Giving, but they need more.
Sally, thank you.
Now, still to come on Monday night's calendar, we've all weekend sport, including a First League victory for Bradford City manager Graham Alexander.
And with low pressure systems dotted around the UK, it's not favourable for our weather story. But as we head towards the end of the week, the question mark hangs over to these fronts right here. Join me later for more.
Now, of course, we are getting closer to December, and the chances are you've probably given some thought to Christmas coming just around the corner.
Yes, but for those already struggling to put food on the table, the ramping up of the festivities could also be ramping up worries over feeding the family.
Well, now some charities and a supermarket are trying to highlight that many will need to lean on food banks this Christmas. And we can join Jenny Henry in Scarborough for more. Jenny.
Well, welcome to Trafalgar Square. And no, I don't mean that one. We're actually in Scarborough tonight, where the tree here is slightly different from that Norwegian fir that we know down south. This one is less pine and more penny. It's actually made up of the top 10 products needed by food donation charities this winter. There are 2,000 products on here, with staples such as cereal, tea bags and pasta. It's a statement of the desperate need for help from food banks and charities at this time of year. The Trussell Trust, Fair Share and Tesco have teamed up on this campaign because, as so many are feeling the pinch already, it gets even worse at Christmas.
So we've got all of the top 10 items that would normally be received by food banks at this time of the year, the sorts of items that people really need. So long life items, pasta, tins of tuna, coffee, things like that, that really, really go a long way to enabling people to make sure they've got the food and the essential items that they really need at this time of the year.
It is without a doubt our busiest winter yet, and that's a combination of things. It really is we know that times are tough for people. People are struggling to afford the essentials that we all need to get by. And on top of that, food banks are seeing their stock levels go down, and they're struggling to keep their doors open and their services available for people who need it.
Well, the tree lighting ceremony took place earlier today, with the Hackness Ladies Choir entertaining crowds with carols and mince pies being passed around. The Christmas spirit was well and truly present. Tomorrow, all of these parcels will go off to Trussell Trust and Fair Share charities in the area. And if you can't come down to Trafalgar Square in Scarborough tonight, there are donation points across the communities all over our region. We all know that Christmas is about giving, and this year that generosity is needed more than ever.
It certainly is, Jenny. Thank you very much in Scarborough. Well, next tonight, tests to assess the health of newborns don't work as well on babies with darker skin tones and need to be updated immediately.
That's according to research from the NHS Race and Health Observatory, which looks into health inequalities.
Yes, they looked into the current test, which is called the APGAR score, and which is used by doctors and midwives minutes after a baby is born.
The test looks at newborns' appearance, pulse, reflexes, activity and respiration. But there are concerns the appearance criteria isn't fit for purpose, as it's based on babies with white skin. Catherine Walker has been investigating.
Looking at pictures of their newborn baby brings back painful memories for Matthew and Lauren. Jackson was born with jaundice, but his condition wasn't picked up during newborn tests, leaving him dangerously unwell. The symptoms, like yellow skin, can be more difficult to see in babies with a darker skin tone, and they think his race played a role in his late diagnosis.
The midwife quickly assumed that I was white, as I'm light-skinned as well. So I think it started from there, where they just quickly assumed that if one look of Jackson and me, he would be Caucasian, which I think it was very naive of him.
Historically, skin colour has been used to assess the health of newborn babies. But new research from Sheffield Hallam University now suggests this method isn't accurate, especially for people from ethnic minority backgrounds.
The most commonly used neonatal assessment tools are not really fit for purpose, especially with the APGAR score. One of the terminologies being used, pink all over, it seems to be not applicable to any ethnic minority background, let alone black or Asian background.
The report calls for guidelines that refer to skin colour to be updated and for the increased use of screening devices.
Yes, how's the baby getting on?
The baby's doing really well, clinically improving.
Consultant Dr. Oddy, who helped with the research, wants to see these changes introduced urgently.
We're very keen that people think carefully about how they teach their colleagues to make assessments of babies, and we've suggested various improvements in how that might occur. And so we're excited about people using machines more to answer the question, if it comes up, is this patient perhaps a bit on the blue side, or perhaps they might have some jaundice.
But with figures showing that neonatal deaths are more likely in babies from ethnic minority backgrounds, Professor Patel from Wakefield says more needs to be done to tackle inequalities in maternity care.
Through research, it's important that you've got a representative sample of the diaspora across the country. Because if you're sampling the larger white population, leaving out, for example, in this case, people of colour, then you don't know how effective it's going to be in that group of people, really, and in this case, the babies that we're talking about.
In a statement, the government said maternity care must be at the same high standard for everyone, and they are exploring options to improve tests for newborns. But until baby screenings are suitable for everyone, Matthew and Lauren worry that babies of darker skin tones like Jackson could be misdiagnosed. Catherine Walker, ITV News.
Well, earlier I spoke to Professor Khabib Navi from the NHS Race and Health Observatory. That's the organisation which is calling for better tests for newborns. And I began by asking how easy it would be to introduce more suitable measures for babies with different skin tones.
Some of these tests have been around for over 70 years, have been designed on white European babies and are still being used today. The APGAR score, for example, judges the health of a baby minutes after its birth, partly based upon the colour of the baby's skin. Now, that was not right in 1952 when the APGAR score was launched and rolled out, and certainly not right today in 2023. And that's why we commissioned this review to look at those historical tests to see whether they are fit for purpose or whether they need immediate revision. And some of those recommendations that we've highlighted in our review are quite easy to roll out. These include, for example, making guidelines and these tests more inclusive. Secondly, having more diverse education and training for healthcare staff on these matters. And thirdly, to use more routine clinical assessments rather than subjective observations.
What advice would you have for any parents or parents-to-be who might be watching this and who might have concerns about that? What would you say to them?
Well, firstly, the advice would be to speak with your healthcare professional, with your midwife, your health visitor, your GP, nurse, and to ask the questions. And even later on, to ask very fundamental questions around which tests are being carried out on my baby and are these fit for purpose for the baby.
How will you help to empower parents? What will be the next steps that you take as a result of these findings?
Well, we need to diversify education of healthcare staff as well as increasing awareness and knowledge amongst our mothers and mothers-to-be and communities more generally. The more messaging we get out there around diversity and around inclusion and around asking these very fundamental questions, the better.
Okay, Professor Navi, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Well, time for some sport now and tributes paid to a footballing great.
Zero Accounting Software sponsors ITV Regional Sports Report.
Well, Chris is with us in the studio. And Chris, a really sad day yesterday when we found the news that Terry Venables had sadly passed away at the age of 80. A real incredible character in football.
He really was, wasn't he, Lisa? Yeah, he'll always be fondly remembered by me, especially for giving me one of the best summers of my youth as the manager of England at Euro 96. And 6 years after that tournament, Venables was appointed the manager of Leeds United. As you can imagine, there was much fanfare back then that such a charismatic figure had been chosen to replace David O'Leary. Sadly, things didn't work out for Venables at Elland Road. He was sacked after just 8 months, almost a victim of Leeds' financial implosion following their excessive spending before he arrived. Well, Dominic Matteo played under Venables at Leeds. I spoke to him earlier and started by asking how he felt when he heard the news that Venables had passed away.
Yeah, absolutely gutted, like everyone in the football world, football community would have been heard that news. And yeah, I think, you know, you've seen all over social media and everything how well liked he was and the career he had as a player and as a manager and as a coach. He's been everywhere, he's kind of done everything, and just a sad loss.
What are your memories of Terry's time at Leeds?
When he came into the club, he was so clinical and he knew exactly what he wanted. He was a very, very good coach, very experienced coach. And I think sometimes he was that good at what he did. I think sometimes the players didn't quite get it. And he bought into the area as well. This is what I don't think many people will know. He bought a house in North Yorkshire, him and his wife. And his wife actually, I think she said one time when I spoke with them, they said they're thinking about staying because they were loving it that much.
Why do you think it didn't quite work out for Terry at Leeds?
I just think when he came in, I think there was a lot of players at the club, without naming names, probably didn't understand some of the things that Terry was trying to get over, the points. Maybe I'm included in that as well. But he was so technical, and once you got it, it was great. But if you didn't get it, I think sometimes that's where some of the lads struggled, and maybe me as well. But yeah, listen, we knew, like you mentioned, being at Barcelona, imagine that, and winning what he did with them, and you know, being a great manager at Tottenham and for England, like you say, in the Euros and stuff. That was, I mean, even as a Scotland fan, being around that it was amazing to watch. He had such a great team, and again, it may be very unlucky not to have won something with England. But yeah, you know, we're all saddened that that we didn't quite make it work for him, to be honest, because with his kind of experience and the knowledge of the game, you wanted to be around him.
Finally, Dom, how will you remember Terry Venables?
Everyone I speak to, and I've spoken to a few people about him recently, they all learnt something from him, and I think that's really important, and it just shows that he was a class act as well. He dealt with people the right way, and yeah, just lovely manners, kind person, and when you're around him, like you say, he always had a smile on his face, and that's what I remember. He had a big smile, happy, and yeah, a huge loss for the football community, the football world actually.
2 goals in 4 second-half minutes looked to have given Barnsley something to cheer after a week in which they were kicked out of the FA Cup for fielding an ineligible player. But Lincoln pulled level 3 minutes from time, 2-2, the final score. Tyler Smith's goal gave Graham Alexander his first win as Bradford boss as they beat Accrington. It was a Bradford low-knee, Jake Young, who ended Mansfield's 17-match unbeaten run with a goal in stoppage time as the Stags lost 2-1 at Swindon. Doncaster were also the victims of a late goal as they were beaten 3-2 at Crewe. And despite Jack Muldoon's goal, Harrogate were beaten 2-1 at Crawley. On to the rest of the weekend's sport, and the Sheffield Steelers remain top of Ice Hockey's Elite League after a 6-2 win at Guildford last night. The scores were level at 2 apiece heading into the final period, but 4 goals without reply ensured victory for Aaron Fox's men.
No problem at all. Now then, that is the sport, so let's check out the weather. Cold out there, isn't it? Des Coleman can tell us more.
Good visibility on the horizon. TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire weather.
Hi, great to see you. How was your Monday, the 27th of November? I do hope you enjoyed it, even though it was a day that we woke up to grey and damp. We did see that rain slowly starting to ease once we got into the afternoon, but it remained fairly chilly. And when you add on the wind chill, it felt like 3 degrees. Now, we've got relatively milder air on top of us right now, but as we push through to Tuesday, Thursday, in fact, to the rest of the week, as you can see on your screen, it's turning blue. Temperatures are set to tumble. Now, it is low pressure that's dominating across the UK. A number of areas of low pressure, as a matter of fact, not necessarily throwing towards us heavy rain-bearing fronts. We are going to see a number of showers, and because the air temperature drops, we could wake up in the morning to some frost or maybe even some patchy ice. There is a caveat to this system that's sweeping up from the south. We're not quite sure how far that's going to push towards the north, though we'll be watching that. Heading into the overnight story, we've got these showers continue to feed in. They energise just a touch, actually, feeding in from the east, but just before we wake up, the skies will start to clear. Tonight, temperatures dipping down to around 2 degrees. Towards the hills, you may just see a touch of a wintry mix as well. So when we do wake up tomorrow morning, it's not a bad start. We get rid of those showers, and we're in for a very pleasant day. Much drier day, a brighter day as well. The winds continue to fall fairly light as temperatures max out at 5 degrees. Again, with the strength of wind, a breezy day tomorrow, it is going to feel much colder than that, more like 2 and 3. I'm going to leave you with the summary. It remains cold all week, and during the overnights, we could see temperatures dipping down to -2 or -3.
TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire weather.
Thank you very much, Des. It's definitely getting cold. There's a nip in the air.
I know, you certainly wouldn't want to be wearing a kilt, would you, in this weather? I tell you.
Definitely wouldn't.
Definitely not. Now, just to remind you, of course, keep up to date with all the very latest on our website, itv.com/calendar, and I'll be back with our late bulletin tonight at around about 10 to 11. Hope you'll join us then.
We'll see you soon.
Have a very good night.
Bye-bye.